Hi, Joel. How you doing? Thank you so much for including your work and this wonderful written description. This is great. You'll hear me say this to different students, and I've already started saying it in this critique forum, but it's really, really important for students to understand how the relevance of describing their work in minute detail. And this is no exception. I mean, this is fantastic. During your design career, you're going to be asked to rationalize and describe your design decisions as well as your technical approach to just about every assignment that you're given as a professional designer. Um, to cultivate the ability to be able to expeditiously describe your workflow is something that I think is outstanding, and to cultivate that ability while you're a student is going to transpose itself wonderfully to your professional career. So I love this, and I think not only for this class, I think it's really important for students to really get in the habit of a detailed description for all of their projects, not only in this class but all of your classes. Instructors love it because I know I do, because it teaches me a lot about how you are learning. And many times it's just as important. I get just as much about your learning, about what you're learning and how you're learning from the writing as I do from the work. So thank you. Keep that up. Thank you. So, all right, let's go and take a look. First thing we notice is the format of the ad, and you're not set at 8.5 by 11, and that's a problem. Because we're assuming in this class that the magazine is going to be 8.5 by 11. Therefore, we need to, to format this as a traditional. Not that there's not horizontally formatted magazines. There are, but they're few and far between. And one of the reasons, just so you know, is that so that magazines fit on the rack, and that's why there's most magazines are formatted at 8.5 by 11 or something near that. You find very, very few magazines that are formatted otherwise. And so that said, we need to get this formatted at 8.5 by 11. I think mechanically it's a good, solid image, a solid ad. I think it's the hierarchy is excellent. It's inviting, it's effective, it's attractive. Couple of things I would recommend is take a look at the background image itself. To me, it looks like this could use some adjustment layers. Starting to lose detail in this area right here, so that you want to preserve as much detail as you can in the shadow areas while creating a little more contrast. I think this image itself is a little washed out, meaning that there's not a great distribution of tonal range between the lightest highlight areas and the darkest shadow areas. So I would recommend a Photoshop adjustments layer, specifically a levels adjustment layer, to increase the contrast associated with the background image, as well as this image. I think could also use a pump and contrast. So now take a look at your original work, because this could quite feasibly be the way that the LMS is rendering, or actually the web is rendering this JPEG as you have placed it. So if you want to check, I'd like to see the Adobe Illustrator file so we can definitely check that contrast associated with the background image and this image. Okay, so let's take a look at placement of the logo. I think right now the logo is placed well, right? But you have this other component that's placed right above the logo. And quite typically in the style guide, you'll learn this as you work through your studies as a graphic designer, but you typically, there's in the branding specs of any organization, they have restrictions of how far you need to place elements to the logo. So logo, typically, most companies don't want other elements placed close to their logo because it compromises the brand. And I think this does that. I think this is a great example of that, because right now we have somebody take a look at this and then look at it for 3 seconds, and then look away and describe what you see. They're probably going to say, well, there was a scuba diver on a flag. And that's something that is not the most beneficial situation in terms of branding and preserving the branding attempts that you have created throughout the design of this ad. So I would recommend placing that a little further away from the logo. I don't even think you really need it there. I really don't. Right now we have an issue with the typography, and that I think you've got like I said, the page it's good, mechanically very sound, but right now you've got this situation where you've got this paragraph here, then a big space between this paragraph, and the way that I see this, and the way that most professional designers would look at this, is they would say, okay, these are separate because this designer thinks or appears that that's going to impede the readability by placing this over the trees. And that very well may be. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but personally, I think that what I see here as a professional designer, and what a lot of people, professional portfolio reviewers and hiring professionals, will look at this and say, well, this designer has allowed the image, background image, to force this type down in an area that isn't necessarily pointing to good typography, right? This big, huge space right here is a problem. So in that regard, I would say that points to one of two things. Either find a background image that isn't quite as busy, or think of a different way to present your type. Personally, I think if you move that up, and a lot of this has to do with the reconfiguration of the page too. When you format this to 8.5 by 11, a lot of things are going to change. Okay, so quite feasibly, we are going to have to rethink the placement of and the typeset itself. Okay, so those are my recommendations. I think the first and foremost, the first thing we need to do is get this formatted to 8.5 by 11. So go ahead and do that. We'll take another look and we'll take it from there. Okay, Joel, any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to address any clarifications needed. All right, thank you very much.